and due to the catastrophe that is the world COVID-19 pandemic. And as though we're not been managing our food to market and market to table and landfills efficiently prior to now, there are numerous opportunities for Rotarians to get involved in better management of food delivery and food waste. Our speaker, Richardson, addresses how we can manage and engage young people in recycling and prevention of food waste. Joe and his wife Nancy own T-Bar Holdings, which serves over 2,500 children in their before and after school programs, and 1,200 children in their 7 summer day camps every year. The Richardsons are ardent community builders, and their programs become a bedrock of Montgomery County and Frederick County in Maryland, USA. Joe founded the Mountainside Education and Enrichment, a non-profit that teaches environmental stewardship and sustainability to children young and old. He serves on the Frederick Council Sustainability Commission for 6 years. He's a member of the Maryland Association of Environmental and Outdoor Education, and a member of the American Camp Association and the Maryland Agricultural Education Foundation. In addition to that, the Frederick County Compost Work Group. At the request of the county executive, he served the What's Next steering committee, examining solid waste solutions. He's been a Rotarian for 7 years and currently is the president of the Rotary Club of Southern Frederick. So now I'll hand it over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Christopher. I'm really honored to be here, and I know that I'm representing all of SFRAG as a Rotarian and what we can physically do in our communities. When I joined Rotary, I was involved in being a community builder, and now I realize what a global community we live in, how interconnected we are, and how dependent we are on each other to solve these huge crises that we face. For the sake of expediency and making a fluid presentation, I pre-recorded a video that underscores some of the things that we've been doing with Lunch Out of Landfills, and I'll share that video with you now.
I'm an environmental educator. I'm a member of the Maryland Association of Environmental and Outdoor Educators. We run summer camps for community builders, and our real mission is to connect children to nature. At Mountainside, we incorporate 18 of the 80 solutions proposed in Drawdown, from sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, sustainable architecture, growing food in a sustainable way, composting, among others. In 2016, I was asked to serve on the Solid Waste Steering Committee by the County Executive Jan Gardner. The county was going to build a waste-to-energy incinerator, which had a great deal of opposition from the community. After a 2-year investigation holding public forums, the conclusions were to try to first get the organics out of the waste stream, to have an actual 3-bin system where we would have trash, recycle, and compost. But our community is not good at recycling for a variety of reasons, and we can't contaminate the waste stream. To do so, we would need to have a partner who would be able to compost the material and a place to take it. In 2018, I was approached by Elizabeth McCook, the environmental ed teacher at Urbana High School, who wanted to start a compost program and engage her students in meaningful, sustainable action. And we launched the program that January with good results. And we were diverting as much as 50% of the waste from that program. It was a great start. We also took the students to the landfill 64 miles away in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, so they could see the end place where all that waste went to. In January of 2019, my Rotary Club, Southern Frederick, came through with some funding so that I could sustain the program at Urbana High School, but also launch a program at Urbana Sugarloaf. We held an assembly, engaging the students so they understood why we were doing it, and we showed them how to source separate. So the students pictured here, every day would go into the cafeteria, they would pull the containers out, they would weigh them. The data was absolutely critical in being able to create a much more compelling story. What's pictured now is a typical trash can at a lunch period. So you've got a mishmash of everything. This is what it looked like beforehand. After 2 weeks, the children became much more efficient at separating their organics. I want you to notice that not only is there a clean waste stream, but there's an enormous amount of food that went into the trash untouched. The other photograph shows a clean recycle stream. Unfortunately, most of the plastics that are produced in the United States today are not recyclable. In the case of Frederick County, we were instructed that the children could only recycle the milk containers, water bottles, and cardboard containers that juices came in. We went from 19,002 pounds of trash that was generated from January to June to just 2,997 pounds that was landfill designated. Almost 85% was diverted, and this is where we began to see the need to look at a broader picture. That spring, as we're beginning to see the results from Urbana, we conducted waste sorts at a variety of other schools. To really start a program, you have to look at what you're doing. So we went to 4 schools with the volunteers of high schoolers from Brunswick High School. And we went in and we sorted waste. It's a very unpleasant, yucky job, but the students were very engaged and anxious to be able to do something that made a difference. With funding from the 6 Frederick County Rotary Clubs, a matching district grant, and a contribution of $10,000 from Frederick County Public Schools, we were able to launch programs in 14 schools in the fall of 2019. The successful launch of the program was going to require not only funding, but volunteers, and the Rotarians again came to the rescue. We set up the program by having volunteers in the cafeteria every day for 2 weeks, helping the kids to sort the waste properly in the appropriate containers. I wanted to show you how excited the kids were to be engaged, to be able to do something meaningful. The enthusiasm was palpable. This is not glamorous. It's very yucky work to filter through lunch that 20 minutes before was perfectly edible, and when once mixed with liquids, became pretty gross and disgusting. During the course of this program, throughout the fall, I was at schools on a regular basis, and I began to notice that kids were not drinking the milks or all the fluids they were given. They weren't even opening them. We didn't have an option in cases where we could give the milk back to the food services personnel. So the kids had no choice but to throw the material away. So we instructed the students, if they didn't open their milk, if they didn't drink their milk, to open the container, pour the liquids out, and put it in a recycle bin. You cannot recycle a container that has liquids in it. But I began to notice that there were a lot of unopened containers that kids were pouring out. So I got together with Mike Benitsky from the school board and Alicia Mason-Fewer from the Frederick County Farm to School program to take a closer look. One Monday, we went to Lincoln Elementary School, a Title I school, a school that comes from a food-distressed community where we thought there would be less food waste. But at Lincoln Elementary School in particular, we were seeing greater amounts of food being uneaten, especially fruits, rolls. We partnered with the Frederick Rescue Mission and took the food there. When they asked us where the food came from, it was from the elementary school 4 blocks away. And the data that came from this was absolutely jaw-dropping. This program ran at Lincoln Elementary School for 38 days. In 38 days, we were able to recover 2,508 milks from Lincoln Elementary School in 38 days. That's an average of 64 milks. When you project that average out over a 180-day school year, we were throwing away as many as 11,500 milks annually from one school. In Frederick County, there are 40 elementary schools. In the state of Maryland, there are over 1,600 elementary schools. This is symptomatic of a problem that is occurring not only in Maryland, but throughout the United States. We have federally mandated food programs that schools are to implement. Food services are not allowed to take material back if unconsumed. And in many instances, the schools discourage share tables so that students who would want to drink a second milk or another apple are not given access to do that. It's imperative that we begin to reintroduce share tables, that we do everything we can to recover untouched, uneaten items and get them to communities that need them for milk that's not being consumed. The opportunity to have students be offered milk instead of having it automatically served is another way that savings can be gleaned and fewer products will be improperly disposed. The most important thing we as Rotarians, as citizens, can do is to roll up our sleeves, go into the schools, and see the magnitude of the problem. Until you really see it firsthand, you can't understand how grave the issue is, how nonsensical it is, and how easily remedied it can be. In March of 2019, I attended a Chesapeake Pets training in Alexandria, Virginia for Rotary incoming presidents. At that training, Mark Maloney, the Rotary International president, was in attendance. I had the opportunity in a brief encounter to encourage him to have Rotarians begin to embrace climate change and food recovery and to adopt practices in drawdown. I'm pictured handing him a drawdown book. I was gratified to see that within a month in the Rotarian magazine, Climate Solutions Within Our Reach was a featured article. It emphasized why climate change is Rotary's business, and it cited several of the drawdown solutions as options that we could begin engaging Rotarians and the communities. 2 weeks later, I had the opportunity to attend a climate symposium at the National Geographic in Washington, D.C. Andrew Revkin hosted the event, and Catherine Wilkinson was one of the featured speakers from Drawdown. She coined a phrase that has resonated with me since, solutionist. The most important component here is that we're collecting data, that we have the story, that we have compelling information that makes us take a look and reflect on what we're doing and that we need to change. I want to focus on Greta Thunberg, who was nominated to be Person of the Year by Time magazine. This young teenager from Sweden has launched the Climate Strikers, an enormous climate awareness movement of students. The message is clear, the message is concise, and it's laced with anger. What we need to do is we need to channel that activism, which is so prevalent with these Friday strikes, to becoming solutions, which is exactly one of the solutions that we're proposing in Lunch Out of Landfills. SRAG, the Environmental Sustainable Rotary Action Group, has partnered with these young students, Julia Casoul from Montpellier, France, and Candelaria de Paula from Buenos Aires, to form a Climate Solutions Coalition. SRAG is providing a website where students can begin to communicate with each other to look at solutions that are appropriate for their community, whether it be mitigating the impact of plastics, more sustainable agricultural practices, and everything that we can do to minimize our carbon footprint. The beauty of this movement is that students, again, from around the world can communicate with one another and share each other's projects and successes. I want to introduce you to a couple of students in the Maryland area that are having a profound impact in the same way that Julia and Candelaria are with the Climate Solutions Coalition. She's Shruti Amula. As a 7th grader, she took the initiative to speak to the principal at Clarksburg Elementary School, a feeder school, to start a compost program there. She secured funding, reached out to me and Phil Westcott from Key Compost, and began a program in November of 2018. The next student I want to introduce is Kate Quigley. She attends Churchill High School. She's a member of the Churchill Climate Group, and she took the initiative to speak to the principal, building services, reached out to me to institute a waste sort, and begin a program at Churchill High School all on her own, finding funding just as Shruti had done. The program was ready to launch just before the pandemic hit. Despite her frustration, this program will be launched in the fall of 2020. The next student I want to introduce you to is Loretta Donahue. As a senior at Brunswick High School, she was the person who initiated 4 of the waste sorts in that community and gave me invaluable data to go to the superintendent of schools and initiate the 14 schools that ensued this past year. The last student I want to introduce you to is Amber Carrera. She's been involved with Lunch Out of Landfills since its inception at Urbana High School in 2018. She also testified before the Maryland State Legislature and the Ways and Means Committee advocating for a compost bill submitted by Delegate Alice Kane. One of the most important things that she had done is she reinvigorated the program in Urbana. The data at Urbana had begun to see more contamination and lower percentages of waste diversion. She personally took it upon herself. She got signatures from 1,000 of her fellow students at Urbana to recommit to do a better job of waste diversion and composting. The point to be made here is that as Rotarians, our job is to educate, to inspire, to give students meaningful projects they can engage in, to give them recognition, as evidenced by this photograph where Loretta Donahue is recognized by the Sustainability Commission, and then get out of the way. These students are hungry, desperate for change. I'm personally committed to this for the remainder of my life. The last image I'll show you is my grandchildren. I'm fearful for their future. They deserve to live in a world that I inherited, the same world filled with biodiversity and the beauty of the planet. They're entitled to that, and we're obligated to give that.
Okay, so I have just a few minutes, but some of the things that I wanted to try to mention is that Lunch Out of Landfills, Lunch Out of Landfills started out with 800 students, maybe 50% of the students participating in the program the very first year. The next year, they had as many as, we had 890 students join us from Urbana Sugarloaf. Last year, there were over 12,000 students involved in the Lunch Out of Landfill programs in the 14 schools that I had mentioned. What we see here is not just a program that is a one-day tree planting, but this is a program that involves every student in every school every day. There are amazing curricular ties that come into this, that apply to this. And I want to share just a few of these curricular ties as we talk about some of the partners that I work with. Let's see, where's my slide? Lunch Out of Landfills is, as I had mentioned, it's one of many programs. There are other programs like this, but not too many of these programs have actually taken the time to collect the data to make these compelling arguments. We have a toolkit along with SRAG, and we've compiled a toolkit where a lot of the work has been done. Inside that toolkit, we have the videos that the students have made. There are links to great resources that are available, and even a template on how to collect data. We also partner with PTAs, and we try to focus on teaching parents not only to understand that a lot of the lunches a lot of the material in the lunch they provide kids are actually thrown out, and we also want to try to encourage them to use reusable lunch containers. Some of the partners that I'd like to point out to you that are mentioned in the toolkit are, one, if your community doesn't have a commercial compost facility, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance has not only trainings for community composting and where individuals can compost, but they also have a certification process where you can become a commercially approved composter. So if you don't have that facility, ILSR is a great resource. EcoSafe is a company that manufactures compostable bags, which help us to move the material cleanly. They also have a complete line of compostable products. And they also have engaged in proving that a waste diversion program, when you divert waste by 87%, you're reducing costs by the same manner. And they've also incorporated fundraising programs that students can use to mitigate the cost of diverting waste. I also want to mention the World Wildlife Federation Fund has a Food Waste Warriors, an excellent resource for educating kids. They have students that have videos of how they minimize the amount of food waste that their parents purchase, what they consume, what they throw away. And I also want to mention kisstheground.com, which is run by Finney Makepeace. There are amazing instructional videos as to why we need to do this. It talks about the benefits of composting, the origins of how the earth was formed, and how we need to build soils. The last company I'd like to mention is TerraCycle. I know at least in the United States, there are a lot of compostable items. There are a lot of items that are thrown away that are not recyclable. For instance, juice pouches, chip bags, snack wrappers, those types of things. You could have a fundraising program through TerraCycle. If you engage TerraCycle programming, an effective, clean compost program, a clean recycle program to the extent we can recycle material, we can reduce waste by 90 to 95%. It's a possibility that we have within the schools to teach them, to guide them, and to inspire them. And that's where the true benefit can really arise. I'd like to finish with the Rotary four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? The results of our work in Lunch Out of Landfills is irrefutable. There is enormous amounts of food waste that we're throwing away materials that need to be, especially with this pandemic, cycled back to communities that absolutely need them. The second is it fair to all concerned? And everyone who's involved in the climate crisis, whether it's economically distressed communities, affluent communities, will benefit from instructing children to engage in these programs. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? When I first joined Rotary, I joined the club, worked on local projects, was really inspired how we helped our individual communities. But when I became Rotary president, I began to interact with other Rotary clubs within the Frederick area. I began to partner with their issues and their projects, and they helped me with mine. When I joined SRAG, I became part of a world community, a global community, where I'm interacting with people from every part of the globe. The climate crisis is a global crisis. It's going to take global solutions. And SRAG, among other organizations that interact collectively, will solve the problem. The last of the four-way test is, will it be beneficial to all concerned? My statement there is it's emphatic, but I would almost take the luxury of changing, will it be beneficial to all concerned, to it will be beneficial to all concerned. Drawdown will be following me, and we understand through Drawdown that we've got 10 years to make substantial changes in our behaviors. One side of landfill addresses food waste, it addresses composting. But once you direct a child to one solution, they begin to think more globally of others. I'd like to finish with one other video if I can access it. It's a young girl this young girl is a 3-year-old who lives in Bahrain, and I'm going to share her commentary, and that probably speaks much louder than I could.
Bins. What do you put in them?
So first you get compost, which is the compost bin. Then we have.
What do you put in it though?
And then trash. Well, we put plastic inside the plastic one, and then garbage inside the garbage one, then food inside the food one, and then paper inside the paper one.
Lucy, that's excellent.
With that, I will end. This is not a difficult problem. It can be handled by a 3-year-old. It must be led by Rotarians and engage the world. If Lucy can understand this, all of us can. And thank you for time. We may not have had time for questions, but I'll turn this over to you, Christopher.
Right, and so the thing that I saw come through on the chat, what a brilliant idea it is to have school children and students work. And so there's a shout out to you for leading the way on this.